here with a short forecast for the year 2024. As I've said in my prior forecasts about this one, it's more of a highlight reel than it is an actual forecast. There's too many things going on in the course of the year to really know how anything is going to play out, but we can get a few little hints about where the feel of the year is going. For example, we start the year coming off of a Jupiter station to go direct. That we get that energy right at the very beginning of the year. That's good. Mercury also stationed to go direct on January 1st. So we have the sort of sense of forward-moving energy as we begin the year. The first moments of the year have to do with moving forward again. And that's something that we'll see throughout January. Uranus stations to go direct in January as well. I'll give you a little bit more on that in a bit. So this is something we begin the year with a little bit more forward movement, especially after the last few months of 2023, which were not uneventful. They had kind of a little bit of a bogged down feeling. And I think the first few months of 2024 will require us to get back up to speed, and then things get moving quite a bit in the springtime. Is the association with the northern hemisphere, of course. If you're in the southern hemisphere, you have to reverse it. Okay, so general theme, right? We're coming a little bit out of the heavily Piscean energy. Pisces energy stays around for a while, though. Okay, the Piscean murkiness, that sense of, really, what can you do? Do you want to engage in the world, or do you want to kind of escape? All of that sort of stuff really remains over the course of the next few years. We have Neptune at the end of Pisces. We have Saturn in Pisces. Next year, 2025, we will have the nodes, we'll have the north node of the moon in Pisces. So the Piscean theme is staying around for a while, but it's not quite so dominant in 2024 as it was in late 2023. We're also kind of pulling away from that Capricorn time. We're gonna, we're gonna revisit it. We're gonna revisit it. We don't pop out of Capricorn. Pluto was in Capricorn from 2008, so it's a long period of time, and it doesn't end in a snap like that. But we're certainly moving away from the intensity of the Capricornian energy that we had from, let's say, 2019 onwards. So we're getting a little bit of motion out of there. Pluto will leave. What we're getting more of this year is Aquarian energy. Again, Uranus stations to go direct on January 27th, the first major planetary station of the year. And Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. Okay, we have Uranus conjoining with Jupiter this year, and not strictly Uranian, but it gives a very, well, it's not strictly Aquarian, but it gives a very Aquarian kind of vibe to things. And then Pluto goes into Aquarius again. And here we have a very Aquarian kind of vibe. Now Pluto is going to come back out into Sagittarius. God forbid, he's going to go back into Capricorn again during the course of the year, just to sort of finish up business. But this is really the entrance into Pluto in Aquarius. We had a little taste of it last spring. I think we're going to get a more definitive taste of it this year. Some issues that have to go with the Pluto in Aquarius era. And I have a video on Pluto in Aquarius, so you should search it out on the channel. Just go to the channel, to click on the channel and scroll down till you find it. It's a ways back, but you don't want to just search Pluto in Aquarius or get somebody else's video. Anyways, so we have Pluto and Aquarius themes. They include AI. As soon as Pluto went into Aquarius last year, artificial intelligence became this big topic. That is, it's in the tech world, it's in the academic world, it's all over the place. We also have, with Pluto in Aquarius, a big emphasis on unions. And that is something that we'll see again throughout this year. Right? You didn't hear about unions for decades. They seem like a thing of the past, and now all of a sudden they're really rising again. That's right, Pluto and Aquarius. And then we have the great emphasis on things like diversity, equality, and inclusiveness that you see that rattling around the universities now. And couple of university presidents, prominent institutions have lost their job over this. That's another Pluto and Aquarius kind of theme. Again, Pluto doesn't play sides. You know, Pluto is not making things better. He's given us stuff to deal with. So those are some of the themes that you'll see this year. Now, Pluto goes into Aquarius, right? This is terrific. You want to begin 2024 with this. First, Pluto and the Sun meet at 29 degrees, the very last degree of Capricorn, the last degree and minute, 29 degrees, 59 minutes of Capricorn. They meet there on January 20th, right before they both go into Aquarius. That's the point in time we get the real signal about Pluto leaving Aquarius, right? We're going to hear about it. This has a lot to do with the structures of government and institutions and all of those things that are crumbling around us, right? So keep an eye right there, that third week in January. And then Pluto and the Sun come together into Aquarius. And that's a real heralding time. You know, when the Sun goes into Aquarius with Pluto, only hours apart, that's a real significant heralding. Here we are. Here we are. And this is closely accompanied by Uranus's station to go direct 2 days later. And this happens right around the Leo full moon, which is Leo, I know, but the Sun is in Aquarius. This big ball of Aquarian energy right there on the third week of January. It's a big starting point for this Aquarian theme. It's also a wrap-up point for Capricorn. That's true, but it's a starting point for Aquarius. So keep your eye on that time. Eclipse season starts on March 25th. Actually, it starts 2 weeks before that at the new moon that builds up the energy towards the eclipse on March 25th, which is a lunar eclipse. We always have solar and lunar eclipses in pairs. Sometimes solar goes first, sometimes lunar goes first. This time, lunar eclipse goes first. It's at 5 degrees of Libra. The moon will be at 5 degrees of Libra as the sun is at 5 degrees of Aries. If you have something right around those degrees, this is your eclipse. This is a manifesting eclipse, right? It's a lunar eclipse. It's a full moon. So this is manifesting. Just look and see what happens at the time. Of course, people could be a little bit of, you know, full moon lunacy amplified by the eclipse. But you see what happens, that you keep your eyes on. 2 weeks later, on April 8th, at 19 degrees of Aries, we have the solar eclipse. And this is the one that is seeding things going forward. Folks that have stuff right around, and I mean right around 19 degrees Aries. You can go look at my video on eclipses too. Right around 19 degrees Aries, get that signal of, oh boy, here it comes. But we don't know what's going to manifest. We're gonna have to wait a little while for that to manifest. But, you know, often right around solar eclipses, the tension is very, very high. And so keep an eye out for that. Really we have to go back to about March 14th. Oh, no, let's go back before that. It's March 25th, about right around March 11th. We have the new moon, the eclipse on March 25th, and then we have the next one on April 8th, and we don't walk down until we get to the next full moon 2 weeks after that. It's a very amped up eclipse season. It's a very amped up eclipse season, particularly because it's on the Aries-Libra axis. So, you know, it has a lot to do with individual, you know, what you're looking for, what you're trying to do in your life versus, you know, perhaps the demands of partnership. But I want to say more generally, the kind of social constraints that might be on you, the sort of minding your manners and going through channels. Could be a little disruptive in that sense. You know, the Aries energy wants to push forward, whereas the Libra energy wants to sort of step back and take others' perspectives. The aspect of the year happens on April 20th. That's my vote for the aspect of the year, you know. It is the meeting of Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. Jupiter and Uranus are going to meet in Taurus. Now, the Jupiter-Uranus cycle is about a 14-year cycle. It takes about 14 years for these two planets to get together. The last time they got together was in 2011, and which is, of course, a little bit more than 14 years, a little bit less than 14 years. They got together in the sign of Pisces. And before that was 1997, and they got together in the sign of Aquarius. Now, Uranus-Jupiter conjunctions usually signal major technological changes. Things shift in the areas of technology. We get a different perspective on things. We get new things coming in. 1969 was a really great one. That was the year that we went to the moon, and it was also the year that the 747 was introduced. And if you're into the whole history of computers, it was apparently a pretty significant thing at that point as well. 1969 was a big one. 1997, Ann Whitaker's wonderful book, Jupiter Meets Uranus, I think is the title. I think that's the title. But Ann Whitaker, she had a great book out all about that conjunction in 1997 in the sign of Aquarius, which incidentally got a lot of us into astrology, got a lot of people sort of moving into the metaphysical realm, and also was kind of a turning point in the history of the internet. 2011, in the sign of Pisces, here we have the sign of the refugee, the sign of the disempowered, and so on. And the technological thing that happened then was a little bit subtle in my estimation, as we would expect with Pisces. And that was we had both in Arab Spring and the Occupy movement, we had the use of technology, things like Twitter and cell phones, and in order to mobilize people, in order to mobilize large groups of people. And it was a sort of using technology as power. This time around, the conjunction is in Taurus. It's the sign that we would associate with resources. It's also the sign that we would associate with finances. And Uranus's trip through Taurus, as I've said many times, has a lot to do with cryptocurrency. And I think that it will be after, probably get the message right around the conjunction on April 20th, but it'll be after the conjunction on April 20th that we'll really understand what's happening with cryptocurrency. I am highly critical of it. You can't have a currency that fluctuates in value like that. I mean, it's a currency, but one year you can buy a car for 1 Bitcoin. The next year you're going to need 3 Bitcoins. That's not much of a currency. That's like the kind of thing that happens in some countries when you've got runaway inflation and stuff like that. It's an investment tool, but it's not necessarily a bad idea. It's been really poorly done. It's not necessarily a bad idea. And what its fate is going to be, we'll probably see. Uranus is now in the last third of Taurus, getting ready to leave in a little while. Jupiter is coming there to meet him. We'll probably find out what happens with cryptocurrency. We'll probably find out a lot of what happens with other banking things. And it should be a very interesting time in terms of the markets and all that, notwithstanding the fact, or not neglecting the fact, I should say, that it's also very close to the eclipses. So keep an eye on the world of finances, let's say, in April. Okay. Then on May 2nd, yeah, Pluto at 2 degrees of Aquarius stations to retrograde. Pluto stations have a lot to do with intensifying the power of Pluto. So we take everything that Pluto in Aquarius means, we intensify it right around the station. Let's say liberally April 30th to May 4th, right in that time. But I think, pretty close to the Pluto station, you get that real intensity. Eclipses, intense. Pluto station, intense. They're coming kind of right on each other. You see how the springtime from late March through early May is kind of like building, well, it's building up and also releasing some of these tensions. So that's a time to really pay attention to during the course of the year. On May 25th, Jupiter goes into Gemini. We'll have a video about that one and how it affects each sign, because it does have different flavors for each of us. Jupiter, the planet of expansion and optimism and enthusiasm, not thrilled about being in the sign of Gemini, which has a lot more to do with like everyday kind of stuff. Jupiter wants to pack his bags and go to the airport and fly to, fly across the pond someplace and go, on a big trip. Gemini is more about you get in your car and you make your local trips around and stuff like that. Maybe you take a little day trip or something like that. Jupiter isn't crazy about the sign of Gemini. However, Jupiter in Gemini will probably have a lot to do with the flavor of our approach to technology. Again, with all of the Aquarian stuff going on, we add in some Gemini and, communications and things like that become a little bit more prominent. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Jupiter in Gemini is really kind of its own topic, but that is one of the big shifts that are in the course of the year. Now, Saturn stations to retrograde on June 29th in Pisces. Okay, we'll just hold off on that. Saturn stations, heavy kind of energy, work oriented, and things like that. We'll talk about it in detail when we get there. But on July 2nd, Neptune stations to retrograde. Now here we have these are very opposing energies. Saturn is practical, earthy, solid. Neptune is ethereal, spacey, and anything but solid. And so these two planets, each giving us a strong dose right at that particular time, is likely to be quite interesting. Saturn kind of, in a sense, brings us down a little bit. It brings us down to earth. Saturn wants to quelch your high-flying kinds of fantasies. Neptune wants to encourage them. So we have this back and forth push-pull. If Neptune stationed first and we had this, well, we're up there and then Saturn brings us down to earth, it wouldn't be great, I guess. But we have the other way. Right? We're down to earth and then suddenly we're lifted up. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting right there, the end of June, beginning of July. Now, one thing about Neptune station is that it is at 29 degrees. It's at 29 degrees, 55 minutes of Pisces. It's at the very, very end of Pisces. Now, remember we had Pluto and the Sun meeting at the very, very end of Capricorn. And now we've got Neptune stationing at the very, very end of Pisces. Piscean themes are going to be very strong at that time. Okay, and that includes immigration, refugees, and things like that. There's other things as well. We'll talk about it when we get there. But we get the very end. We have a lot of stuff happening this year at the very, very end of a sign. In September, we have Uranus stationing at 27 degrees of Taurus. Again, getting pretty near the end of the sign. We're starting to find out, in other words, Capricorn, Pluto's passage through Capricorn, Uranus's passage through Taurus, Neptune's passage through his home sign of Pisces. This has been going on for long periods of time. We're starting to get a sense of what these have been about, what changes have been brought about. You have to wait until evening to see the results of the day, as the saying goes. Wish I could remember who said it. It was a Roman guy. But anyway, it's getting to be evening time. It's getting to be evening time here. We're getting to see what the results of these outer planets in these signs is. This is a big theme of 2024. Another thing that is happening in the summertime, right around August 19th, but it keeps going into 2025, is that Jupiter in Gemini is square to Saturn in Pisces. This is what we call the opening square and of the cycle that began in 2020. Now, that happened back in Capricorn, and Jupiter, Saturn, whatever, may have gotten a little bit lost in the shuffle, but it had a lot to do with all the events of 2020, pandemic, election stuff, and all. It was a big year. 2024, the second half of 2024 into 2025, is asking us, what are we going to do about it? Right? We set the table in 2020 for some stuff to happen. What are we going to do with it? Again, 2024 has that feeling of being kind of like, what's the end result? We may not get the end result. We're heading towards the end result of things in 2024. If you add the numbers together, 2 plus 2 plus 4, 0, but it's an 8-year, it's a manifestation, right? It has that sense about it. It has that sense of being a manifestation year. We're going to find out, what are the results of the things that we have set up until this point. Jupiter-Saturn has a lot to do with social kinds of issues. It has a lot to do, it has to do with political stuff. I'd say social stuff as much as political. It has a lot to do with where our collective zeitgeist is going. And these are mutable, somewhat slippery signs there. And so it will be quite interesting to see how we're handling this at that point in time. So Uranus' station to retrograde is on September 1st, which is the same day that Pluto backtracks into Capricorn. So Uranus stations as Pluto backtrack. You're actually, as Pluto is at the 0-degree mark of Uranus's sign. So we're going to get a big burst of Aquarian energy right at the beginning of September, followed by Pluto coming back into Capricorn and saying, well, we still have some work to do here, folks. Right around the beginning of September, there should be a fair amount of drive for independence. We want to change things up a great deal. Some folks are going to be kind of a little bit ornery about things. It's so very different from anything else, but it will be a very powerful time, and it's one of the highlight times of the year. And then we get into eclipses again. In the same way that in the springtime, we had some planetary aspects that were quite significant accompanying the eclipses. When we get to the eclipses in September, we have this Uranus station, Pluto back into Capricorn, and we have this, resurgence of energy that would be very, very strong in September. On the 17th, we have a lunar eclipse, again, manifestation eclipse at 25 degrees Pisces. Right? Remember, Neptune is stationing at 29 degrees in July. He's going to station at 25 degrees to go direct a little bit further on in the year. So we're landing at the latter part of Pisces. Again, we're a manifestation of the time that we've been dealing with these Piscean themes. The Piscean themes, the Piscean eclipses are by no means over. We're getting to feel towards sort of one of the results of things. Then on October 2nd, we have the solar eclipse, and the solar eclipse then is happening in the sign of Libra. We are again setting up the table for something that we'll have to manifest over the course of time. Those that have placements right around 10 degrees Libra, and maybe we could say 10 degrees Aries, would be feeling this a little bit more. But I think in general, the solar eclipse in Libra, let's call it a challenge to diplomacy. A little while later, we have Jupiter stationing to retrograde. Now he's really shot up into Pisces, and now he's going to stop and back up. That happens on October 9th, and it happens at 21 degrees of Gemini. And so, we get a strong dose of that Gemini energy. We get a lot of enthusiasm, right? When Jupiter stations, we get a lot of enthusiasm. We feel we can do it. We've had the Uranus station. We've got Pluto changing signs. We're about to have a Pluto station. We've got the eclipses. And then we've got all this enthusiasm, this forward-moving, we can do it energy. Well, if you're kind of discouraged by the things that have been happening at the time, that could be, a helpful, positive thing. If you've been causing some of the trouble, you're also getting that infusion of Jupiter energy. So that could be a little bit of a challenge. Next up, on October 11th, at 29 degrees and change of Capricorn, Pluto makes his last station in the sign. Expect a big deal. Pluto's first station in the sign was a big deal, and we can imagine that his last station in the sign, he's about to leave for the last time for, hundreds of years. This is it. And he's going to say something on his way out the door. He's going to let us know. Again, this is really the sense of, maybe everything else is we're getting near the end. We're getting near the point of manifestation. We're getting near the point of understanding. This is, here you guys go. All right, this is from now until he leaves the sign. This is it. This is Pluto in Capricorn, written in very, very large and very, very. I'm picturing somebody like chiseling away at the stone, very deep letters. Saturn stationed to go direct on November 12th, 19th, 15th, on November 15th at 12 degrees Pisces. Again, there's a little bit of heaviness about it. It's Saturn in Pisces. This is not the most optimistic kind of energy. It's not necessarily terrible. It's a Saturn station. We'll talk about it then. It does, however, put a coloration around this time, which is worth noting because Pluto comes back into Aquarius, and this time to stay on November 19th. And if we didn't get a clear enough message about Pluto in Aquarius in January, we're certainly going to get it in November. It is, of course, worth noting that these eclipses, the Jupiter station, and then the Saturn and later the Pluto station, are all nestled around the U.S. presidential election, which, I don't want to be too U.S.-centric, but it looks like, it's shaping up to be a fairly significant election in many, many ways. So we're going to be getting the full force of the planets at this time. I think particularly Jupiter, although, it's not exact, but Jupiter's station is really going to be sort of pressing in on this energy. So we'll have to see how that happens. But that's a big energy. In other words, the U.S. election is happening within the context of some very unsettled planetary energy, which goes all the way from September, essentially through the end of November. On December 7th, Neptune stations to go direct. All right, now Neptune back at 27 degrees of his home sign is stationing to go direct. Again, this is really a signal. It's not the last time, but it is a major signal towards what we're looking for. What have we reaped from Neptune's time in Pisces? Of course, it's Neptune in Pisces, so it's not exactly, the clearest bit of information we're likely to get, but it's there. And then at the end of the year, actually, it's on Christmas Eve on December 24th, Jupiter again squares Saturn, and we get the next piece of information. This is like, you get things unfolding in a sequence. This is the next piece of information you get in the Jupiter-Saturn square. So, this is, again, something we have to watch and see, and it'll work itself out over the course of time. So here we have the basic pattern. We're moving from Capricornian we're moving from Capricorn Pisces towards Aquarius Pisces. And Aquarius and Pisces are very different energies, right? Aquarius is an air sign. It is rational, principled. Pisces is a water sign. It's emotional. It is compassionate. It is, it's not like it's unprincipled, but it's not quite that same sort of you can point to it kind of energy. Aquarius is about making the world as good as we can, right? It's very idealistic. What can we do to make the world better? Pisces is a little bit more about transcending. The world is the way it is. Let's see if we can, maybe we got to get out of it, or maybe we can, find some way to, look at things from a higher perspective. These are two kind of contrasting energies that are playing with us, and it's not unusual that they've done so. Actually, during the aughties, we had Uranus in Pisces and Neptune in Aquarius. We had a mutual reception between the two, and there was a lot of stuff that happened at that point in time, which there's a certain resonance with now. Anyways, we'll have to unpack this over the course of the year with our weekly and monthly forecast. If you've watched this far, I cannot imagine that you wouldn't want to subscribe because after all, see you soon.